What is up, fantasy people? Welcome back to the True North Fantasy Pod presented by Monkey Knife Fight. I am Trav. I am kicking it in Dirty Laundry Studios 2.0 as always. And of course, with me, co-hosting and West Coasting tonight, rocking that Oilers jersey with the commencement of the NHL season. Tyrell McLaughlin, how's it going wearing that C tonight, buddy?
Yeah, dream living. I love this time of the year. You know, baseball playoffs. We got football in full swing and hockey season starting. It is dream living. Things dreams are made of.
Yeah, it's for us sports fans. We've got a plethora of options, but tonight, of course, we're going to be talking fantasy football. Just want to give a little plug to the True North content. The crew is working hard out there with all the weekly articles and whatnot. So make sure you check out the site and the socials to find all of the work from the team. The site is truenorthffb.com, and the socials, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at TrueNorthFFB and on Facebook at True North Fantasy Football. Just want to make sure everyone knows that if you want to get swagged out in some of that TNFF gear, you can see a little bit behind me for our video listeners. Make sure you go check out just our catalog at the site, truenorthffb.com/shop. Of course, our gear is powered by Viridian Global, so check them out at viridianglobal.com, and you can see all the brands in the football collective. There's tons of different pods and websites and stuff like that. And then lastly, for True North content, make sure you smash that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you get those notifications, hit that little bell icon. We got 4 shows a week. We cover season-long Dynasty, DFS, and then we got some best ball takes in there, especially in the offseason as well. So you name it, we've got it on the YouTube channel. Make sure you leave a comment too. That helps us out. We love getting that activity on our pieces on the YouTube channel, and we love to chat with everybody who likes our work. So let us know what you think on the YouTube videos, and press that little thumbs up for the likes as well, because we've been seeing some really good traction on the YouTube channel. Just want to keep that rolling, baby.
Pew, 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 pew. And we are, of course, very proud members of the Fantasy Points Media Group. We all suggest that everybody go and sign up for fantasypoints.com subscription. It's an unreal team, like the legendary John Hansen, Adam Kaplan, the accuracy guru Joe Dolan. You got Graham Barfield, the creator of Yards Created. Scott Barrett and Wes Huber, 2 of the 5 FSWA award nominated DFS Writers of the Year candies last year. And yeah, only at fantasypoints.com are you getting like Tom Brawley's advice from the betting side of things, Greg Cosell's film analysis, which is unparalleled, and Dr. Edwin Porris's breaking down every injury. And as always, I have to leave off like a number of other big names over at fantasypoints.com. But the idea is that it's an ensemble of elite analysts all atop their field, serving awesome niches, and they're all just kind of invested in this thing, right? Because a number of them are also co-owners of fantasypoints.com. So it's the best advice, the best information, and you're getting it from the best people you want to be getting your advice and information from. So I think the question is, why wouldn't you sign up for fantasypoints.com? And when you do, it would help us out a lot. It's like the best way to support us to use our promo code 21TrueNorth10, all caps, and you can harness that buffet of knowledge and analysis on top of a litany of stats, tools, and other content and goodies. What kind of content and goodies we got going on tonight, Trav?
All sorts of goodies. I mean, Halloween's coming up, and if we're trick-or-treating tonight, I'm telling everybody it's going to be a treat. We're playing a little fantasy truth or dare tonight, Ty. I'm super excited. We got a little theme action to the epi, and it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about some hard truths from around the NFL. Not always hard, actually. There's going to be some pleasant truths here as well, some pleasant surprise and whatnot for the truths. And then, of course, we're going to talk about some daring propositions, getting into some of the more sketchy situations and seeing if these are situations that we can still make fruitful for our fantasy rosters. But before we do that, Ty, I do want to get into some of the injuries that have been happening, because there's a couple of biggies that happened this past week, and we would be remiss if we didn't let the people know how they can, recoup from those, or where they might be able to find some value to still be able to kind of go in on some of these situations where guys have been injured. Top of the docket here, I've got that actually a returning player, Ty, and that's T.Y. Hilton. He is eligible to come back in week 6, which is this week, back at practice, I believe. I'm just curious for that Colts passing game. We saw a big blow up from Michael Pittman this past week. Paris Campbell and Zach Pascal got theirs as well. Does TY do anything for you in the way that you would want to use him as a flex or maybe a wide receiver 3? Or do you think he more so just puts a little bit of dousing on the flames for those other 3 guys that I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm not even sure he does. Like, I think Michael Pittman is certainly carving out a role, and he's obviously headed in the opposite direction in his career arc compared to T.Y. Hilton. And T.Y. Hilton's just the guy who is very undersized. Yeah, he's been very durable up until this point, but once you get to a certain age and you're past that age apex, you're just less able to come back from injuries. You're less able to play through injuries and things like that. So T.Y. Hilton's just somebody I won't be interested in owning in a season-long perspective. And I think Michael Pittman was already somebody you're having a hard time starting anyways in that Colts offense. And Zach Pascal's kind of resided on people's benches if he was picked up early on. And Paris Campbell's just a thorn in everyone's side at all times, no matter where he's playing in the slot or outside. But I think it's run game or bust in Indianapolis when it comes to fantasy.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think gun to my head, I'm going Michael Pittman for sure. I have been previously a fan of TY. Coming into the season, I was thinking TY, if he was healthy, could be the wide receiver 1 for that team, but it looks like Michael Pittman has taken that over and kind of taken advantage of the fact that TY is the aged vet and got injured. So good for Michael Pittman. But yeah, exactly like you said, we just want to get some of these running backs and bounce.
And they get the Texans this week, so I think I will have Michael Pittman as a wide receiver 3 in my rankings.
Yeah, no, I like it. I think I'll probably be around the same area. The next guy I want to talk about is just a quick touch on Justin Fields. He had a crazy hyperextension of his knee over the weekend, but it's looking like he's going to be good to go. He was I think back in a limited fashion today. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the Bears, but that's just a note that Justin Fields should still be starting for the Chicago Bears. Hasn't been pretty for him though. Hasn't been pretty, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that offensive line. Well, that offensive line, like he's the league leader in sack percentage and sacks per drop back, all those stats. And that's why he has the lowest touchdown rate in all of football as well. And he's yet to really be unleashed with his legs too. So I think it's coming for Justin Fields, but that offensive line took an even bigger hit this week too, but they really need to not be just otherworldly bad.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a hold for me because I have a couple redraft teams where I do have him on my bench as the second quarterback. I've talked about it before on the show. He's just kind of that guy that I got that has the Konami upside. So I am still going to hold him if I can keep that bench spot for him, just for the fact that if he breaks out towards the end of the season, he could be something that really solidifies that championship run down the stretch. Next guy is also not really an issue. Zeke came up with a little bit of a lower back. He was questionable yesterday, or he was questionable coming into the week here, but I think he's going to be fine from everything that I've seen. Dallas Goedert from my Birds, Ty, he is on the reserve COVID list. And so just a note there is that we now both have Zach Ertz as a top 12 tight end for this week. That's the Thursday nighter against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So make sure you check in your lineups tomorrow morning or this morning if you're listening to this on Thursday. Just a couple notes there is that the Eagles have targeted the tight end over 25% of the time this season. Zach Ertz himself has at least 6 targets in the last 3 matchups with Dallas Goedert in the lineup, and the Bucs have given up the 6th most fantasy points per game to the tight end in PPR formats this season. So I think you can fire up Zach Ertz as a nice volume option at tight end. Limited upside for sure, but I think decent volume is probably coming his way, Ty.
Yeah, DCI actually tweeted out the splits with and without Dallas Goedert since 2019. He's actually scored less points. I thought it was kind of funny. Just
almost 4 less per game. Yeah.
yeah. But, Zach Ertz, I think I have him as my tight end 8 or so this week. And it's just a reflection, if anything, of how fast the tight end position falls off a cliff this year.
It is a crazy cliff. And he's right in the 8 spot for me as well as I take a look there, Ty. So great minds, buddy. Staying in the NFC with the New York Giants. They have a bevy of injuries, a buffet, if you will, as Kaylee in the chat just said. Not such a yummy buffet, this one, though. Not such a yummy buffet. Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and Kenny Golladay, the entire offensive skill position core, is looking like they could be out this week. Daniel Jones himself has not been ruled out I've seen reports saying that it's unlikely he's going to suit up. I've seen reports saying that as long as he gets at least a limited session in on Thursday and Friday, it's looking okay for him to play. So that's one we're definitely monitoring. And I think that has a trickle down effect on the next couple of guys as well, because Kenny Golladay is doubtful with a knee injury. And of course, the Saquon Barkley ankle looked nasty, Ty. So start where you will, but like, what do you make of this Giants offense? I think maybe start with Daniel Jones, because if he plays, I think it probably makes a difference for the rest of these weapons with Mike Glennon being the alternate option.
And possibly some fantasy football owners, right? Like he's been a quarterback one through 5 games, right? He scored 20 points per game. So it's pretty impressive. And he also has a very low touchdown rate as well. So some regression he could experience in the positive realm. But and he's like second in completed air yards per attempt on next gen stats. Like he's really crushing right now. So Daniel Jones is somebody they definitely want to get back. And yeah, the word on the street is that he could go so long as he passes the concussion protocol. The Saquon Barkley injury is tough. We know he heals supernaturally. He's the Wolverine, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, he should be out at least a few weeks. Like that's what I'm anticipating, at least 3 or 4 weeks, right? And I actually tweeted out the Devontae Booker splits as well. And Devontae Booker in games that he's seen 12 or more carries is averaging over 15.5 PPR points per game. And so if he can catch a couple balls on top of that, I think he actually comes with quite a bit of upside. I'm probably rolling out Devontae Booker this week.
Yeah, definitely a strong RB2 target.
And Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's circle back to the pass catchers there. Toney is looking like he's good to go. Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton practiced today as well. So that could be the triumvirate at wide receiver with Toney, Shepard, and Slayton. Not terrible. I mean, there's some upside with Slayton and Toney, and then Shepard gives you that volume. Do you like any of these guys in this matchup against the Los Angeles Rams, or would you pause for a week to see how that quarterback situation shakes out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not rushing to start any of these guys, that's for sure. Kadarius Toney's the one guy I would be relatively confident starting. I think he's like 3rd in the league amongst wide receivers in yards without a touchdown too, so he could score in this one. I think the matchup is tough, there's no doubt about it, but I think that's an even tougher matchup for the running backs, right? When we talk about Devontae Booker, I'd probably roll him out, but as like a back-end RB2, if not an RB3 or flex play, so... definitely not the nicest matchup when you lose half your offense and some of your most important pieces, but we'll have to definitely give these guys a week to see what they can do. But we know they should be chasing points as well against the Rams.
Yeah, 100%. So there could be some points, but it's like, bottom of the starting roster. And Devontae Booker could give us a running back 2 week based on volume. Love that. Moving along to the Kansas City Chiefs, Ty, we saw Tyreek and Kelsey pop up on the injury report. Tyreek was originally reported as a knee, but I actually saw today that it's actually a quad contusion, which I'm fairly certain is also known as a bruise, but I am not a doctor. And Travis Kelce had a little neck stinger action, so they both popped up with a questionable tag. It looks like they're both going to be good to go. But the big news out of Kansas City, Ty, is Clyde Edwards-Helaire with that MCL injury. He is on the IR, and the earliest he can come back is week 9. First, I want to know how many best ball teams you have set to get a little surge with Daryl Williams getting an added boost in volume, and how useful is Daryl Williams going to be for the next couple of weeks here?
Yeah, I definitely moving him way up. I have lots of Daryl Williams. I thought he might be a little more standalone value-ish kind of guy, but I also have a lot of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, so take good with the bad, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is more of a premium pick, that's for sure. And so like he went down after playing just 25% of the snaps or so last week, according to PFF. Daryl Williams played 43% of the snaps in week 5. Jerick McKinnon shot way up to 31%, far and away his most usage of the season. He played like 12% and 4% of the snaps in the 2 weeks before that. And Williams handled 83% of the snaps, 67% of the attempts, and he ran a route on 81% of the pass plays over the final 3 drives after Clyde Edwards-Helaire exited the game per the utilization report that Dwayne McFarland does. But we also saw Jerick McKinnon getting 2-minute drills, like that type of work, that hurry-up offense type of work. So I expect Daryl Williams to handle the bulk of the early down work, the goal line work as well. Jerick McKinnon probably operates as the pass catching back and like eats into the early down work a bit, with Daryl Williams cutting into a tiny bit of McKinnon's pass catching upside probably. And there's some upside there because this offense relies on yards after the catch in the passing game, especially with teams just showing them too high safety looks all the time. But the Chiefs will remain, if not skew even more because of this injury, towards being a pass heavy offense, I think. And, when you look at the fantasy value of Daryl Williams and Jerick McKinnon, like there's a running back by committee element to this backfield even more, if there was one already. But there's also like a hot hand approach or a matchup based skew to either guy that could take place. So, playing Washington this week as 7-point favorites in a game that is like a point total of 55 right now, I still want to start that lead back, which is Daryl Williams. So I have him as a top 24 running back right now. Haven't nailed down my running back ranks quite yet. Like I want to take another pass at them. But in my first go around, I put Damian Williams in a tier with guys like Javonte Williams, Damien Williams, even some running backs who don't have the last name Williams, like Josh Jacobs, who is playing Javonte Williams Broncos. Chase Edmonds and Zach Moss are a couple guys I have ranked just ahead of Daryl Williams right now. And once we get past those names, we're talking DeAndre Swift, the other Daryl Henderson, Browns running back. So I guess Daryl Williams, pretty locked in running back 2 for me. Jerick McKinnon is somebody who can break one off for sure, comes with some spiked week potential, and he could carve out a role in the pass game in the short term. But for a game against Washington, I still have him ranked as like RB4, just not a guy I'm even trying to squeeze into my flex or anything like that. Even though Washington has given up twice as many receiving touchdowns compared to 30 other teams right now. The Lions' receiving touchdowns are, I think they've allowed 4, and they're the second worst. But that's a little bit skewed because of Cordell Patterson, right? But
that's right, the goat. That's right.
Yeah, like they actually before that they held Saquon and Eckler to like 12 receiving yards combined. So could be hit or miss. And starting Daryl Williams because I hope he scores, basically.
No, I think that's a really good assessment. And I think after this week, it probably gets a little bit more dicey for the next couple because I'm somebody who believes in Jerick McKinnon, especially in this offense, if he can get some pass catching. So I actually have Daryl just outside at 27 this week, just ahead of Tony Pollard, just behind Javonte Williams. Sorry. So right in that tier kind of with you. And I just think Jerick McKinnon could wrestle some of it away because you said it there, the hot hand approach. Andy Reid's just going to want the guy who's producing for the team. And I think Jerick McKinnon's got a little bit of juice left. So that's kind of where I'm sitting for this team. It's basically the passing game or bust. Shout out to our boy Mecole Hardman, who had 12 targets last week. So that's kind of a nice thing to see him getting double-digit targets is kind of like a unicorn. So hopefully he can keep up some of that target share with hopefully this increased passing. But then you look at it and Demarcus Robinson had more snaps than he did. So it's a bit of a crapshoot there. I just chased the upside of Mecole there. The next one we're going to get to, the last one we're going to get to as well was Russel Wilson, man. He ruptured a tendon in his middle finger and he jacked that digit right up. It was pretty nasty looking. And obviously he's going to be sitting out for a little bit. They're targeting, I think, around week 10 after their bye as his return date. Gino Smith is in as the starter now. That's obviously a big downgrade for DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Unfortunately, we just crowned them last week as top 10 receivers for the rest of the season, Ty. But in fantasy football, you got to be ready to pivot, and we are doing just that. So I want to hear how you're pivoting, Ty. How confident would you be in starting those two guys while they're riding the Gino coaster? The Steelers, who they're playing this week, have actually been lit up by wide receivers. So that's kind of a feather in their cap. But how big is the downgrade from Gino? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm still rolling these guys out. There's no doubt, especially DK is going to be like a wide receiver 1. And then, I don't know about Tyler Lockett. Like he's a back end wide receiver 2 for me all of a sudden, just because that's a high variance guy. And Seattle's been a very slow offense so far. So, and what, Russell Wilson, this sucks for fantasy. Like the Seahawks offense is, one that changes the most drastically when they lose their starting quarterback among all teams in the league. Like Russell Wilson is an elite quarterback and he kind of transcends what is otherwise a pretty pedestrian offensive scheme, and just his otherworldly efficiency is kind of what makes that engine in Seattle go. And it's why we tie to that offense for fantasy. So just a big downgrade across the board when it comes to expectations, spiked weeks, where you're going to rank these guys. And it's a really tough that they haven't been lit up by wide receivers, but it can always end up a low scoring affair when you're playing the Steelers. And the other thing is Chris Carson is still battling that neck injury, right? I currently have him ranked as an RB3, I think, like assuming he goes, but Seattle is in Pittsburgh, and that's a tough matchup. And that defensive front for Pittsburgh could really expose the Seahawks scheme and their offensive line, I think. So, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing with Chris Carson. I think I'm starting him over guys like Melvin Gordon and stuff, but yeah, RB3 for him. And then wide receiver 1, back end for DK, back end wide receiver 2 for Lockett, maybe even a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I've got DK as a high-end wide receiver 2 at 14, and then Lockett as a high-end 3 this week at 26. And I just think for Lockett, he takes more of a hit than DK because DK only needs a couple of shots, right? If DK can get wide open, Gino can toss it up, then DK can put up a fantasy week for you. I think Lockett loses more here just because of the mind meld that he had with Russell Wilson. He's the guy who kind of relies more on the volume, and that might not be as secure with Gino. I think Gino is probably going to run the ball a little bit more himself as well. If we look at that game this past week, he played just over a third of the game and he had 3 carries. So obviously that's like super cheapy math to say that over a full game he's going to have 9 carries, but I think we're going to get 5 to 7 carries from Gino, which can help for his personal fantasy floor. And I think that could take away a little bit from Tyler Lockett, especially maybe in the red zone, because Lockett was kind of Russell Wilson's dude in the red zone. So we don't really know how that's going to shake out with Gino. That's not to say he won't be that guy, because Tyler Lockett is great and he can get open really, like as he will, but not to say that Gino's necessarily going to target him. So that remains to be seen. And that's why Lockett gets the biggest dip for me.
And the big thing is just, the red zone trips are going down and just everything is going to be so much worse without Russell Wilson because he's that good. And Gino Smith and the rest of the offensive scheme, the coaching staff is just not, an elite group by any means. And a couple more notes I thought we could mention just really quick. Christian McCaffrey probably coming back. Dalvin Cook probably coming back. Tua Tagovailoa should be back against the Jags this week. So there's lots of notes. Trey Lance, we have to monitor through the bye week with his injury. Could be Jimmy Garoppolo for the 49ers. Joe Burrow should be good to go. Gronkowski is out for the Thursday night football game. Totally. Smokey John Brown signs with the Broncos practice squad. Smoke him if you got him.
Yeah, it's kind of disrespectful. It's kind of disrespectful to put him on the P squad, though. Jeez, Smokey deserves better.
Vote of confidence for Kendall Hinton.
Yeah, nice. He plays quarterback though, bro. He's versatile. That's all we got for the injuries, though. Ty, way to thanks for wrapping it up with those other little notes there. And you want to play some Truth or Dare?
Let's do it. Go to the bushes.
Yeah, it's got weird. It's got weird fast. All right, get into it.
So let's do Ja'Marr Chase because I have here that he is the best pick at the 5th overall pick that the Bengals could have made. I think Rondale Moore can make a little bit of noise here, but basically I want to do a rookie wide receiver check-in here because the truth is that Ja'Marr Chase is the best rookie wide receiver. It's kind of hard to argue that. He's averaging almost 20 points per game. He already has 5 touchdowns, 450 plus yards. But who would you say is the second best rookie wide receiver right now? You got like Devonta Smith, Rondale Moore, Jalen Waddle, Kadarius Toney heating up.
Yeah, for sure. I would say Rondale Moore is the second best. I think Devonta Smith is slowly but surely creeping up for that number 2 mantle, though. He's just kind of taken the alpha role in Philly the last couple of weeks for as far as the receivers go. I mentioned that tight end target share, and that's not going to go away. But I think Jalen Reagor has slowly kind of faded a little bit, but for here and there, a bit of a big play. So I think Devonta Smith is probably going to end the season as the number 2 rookie wide receiver. But Rondale, how can you deny the versatility that he's been getting in that Arizona offense? We've said it. Yeah. We've said it that you can start all 4 of these wide receivers in Arizona, and Rondale looks like the second best option just because of his big playability and the way that Cliff is manufacturing some targets for him. So my vote for that is Rondale Moore, but I do like what we're seeing from Kadarius Toney. Jalen Waddle has had some flashes where he's been heavily targeted. It's a bit in limbo with Jacoby Brissett, so maybe that settles back in with Tua coming back. That'd be nice to monitor. But and Rashad Bateman's probably going to come back in the next little while here, and apparently Lamar Jackson is one of the pass heaviest quarterbacks in the league now. That's just what he is, bro. So it's going to be exciting to see these guys. And another guy I didn't even mention is friend of the show Scott Barrett's heartthrob Elijah Moore. Haven't seen him get unlocked as well. So how do you think it's going to shake out, buddy?
Sorry, who was that? Who were you referring to? I think we cut out.
Elijah Moore there. Yeah, I got you cutting out, and it sounds like you got me cutting out. So
Yeah, Elijah Moore's situation is definitely fragile just because Zach Wilson has been that bad. The Jets offense has been that bad. So I don't really want to invest in somebody that could be as low as the wide receiver 3 in that offense and as low as, 4th or 5th on any given game day in that pecking order in a passing game. That's just so unappealing. Just to circle back to Ja'Marr Chase, like I think he is a wide receiver 1 rest of season 2. I did want to make that point. I'd take him over guys like Deebo Samuel. I'd take him over Keenan Allen or Mike Williams over any Tampa Bay wide receiver. I think I want Ja'Marr Chase over AJ Brown rest of season. And Devonta Smith, yeah, it's probably pretty hot. And Devonta Smith, I think of as kind of your typical boomer bust wide receiver 3, like spiked week potential. He's one of 9 wide receivers with at least 40% of their team's air yards right now. The problem is that percentage isn't worth the same in this offense. Like it hasn't been much of fly Eagles fly this year. You know what I'm saying? Like Ertz has an A-dot. Yeah, the average depth of target is under 8 right now. It's one of the lowest in the NFL. It's like just above guys like Mac Jones and Big Ben. He's 5th worst in completed air yards per attempt per next gen stat. So, a borderline monopoly on something as sexy as air yards is great. It's just not worth as much. Or would be worth much more in a different offense, probably. And Devonta Smith's stats bear this out too. Like he's 10th in intended air yards per Sports Info, 26th in completed air yards. And but with that word of caution, like I still want Devonta Smith in my start 3 wide receiver leagues.
He's got at least 2 or 3 touchdowns called back this season as well. So I think it could look a little bit better because he has been targeted in those lucrative situations. So I'm totally with you. Like the offense is capping him. We talked about it this weekend, Ty, where I like that they're insulating Jalen Hurts with the yards after the catch and whatnot. They just need to take a couple more shots here and there because they have guys that can freaking do that, man. These guys aren't just
this week.
Demons. Yeah, totally against Tampa. So
like, cause he's the kind of guy, and he's the kind of guy I always want to start. Like we know the Eagles are going to be chasing points in this game too, like in this year in general. So he's the type of wide receiver I want to be flexing anyways. He's the type of guy we should be gravitating towards when we're looking for a wide receiver 3 or a flex play anyways. And I could argue Devonta is like a wide receiver 2 this week. Tampa Bay is just a total wide receiver funnel, signified by the Bucs giving up the most fantasy points to the wide receiver position this year. And yeah, you factor in the Dallas Goedert absence, and we can have a lot of confidence firing up Smitty this week. I think I squeezed Jalen Reagor into my top 48 wide receivers for this week ahead of like the Raiders wide receivers. I'd start him over guys like AJ Green and stuff.
I like that. I admittedly need to do another go around on my wide receiver rankings. Wide receiver is always the trickiest I find because it's like there's just so many guys when you're doing those rankings. But I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks in my top 48, which would be that's a good sign for Jalen Reagor as far as how this season has gone. It's a tough one out there. What do you think about your Anthony Schwartz, your Amon-Ra St. Browns, and your Diami Browns, Ty? Are they guys that we're going to be looking towards at the end of the season as producers or not quite?
I mean, I just think in a PPR league exclusively, perhaps. Like, I don't think he has a lot of upside attached to him. Terrence Marshall certainly let down a little bit. And I think someone like Dwayne Eskridge should stay on our radar in Seattle and target those offenses a little bit. Like Diami Brown's a tough one because Curtis Samuel is definitely on the mend and Logan Thomas. So there's room for somebody to produce there. Josh Palmer's another one. Shout out to Canadian content, who I thought might carve out a role in Los Angeles there with the Chargers. But a lot of these rookies, we have to remember, it takes a long time to learn an offense, and coaches are just much more comfortable know what they're doing out there, even if it is at the expense of some upside that they should probably be harnessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I dig it. Okay, Ty, I'm going to keep us moseying along, but before I do, I just want to give a shout out to our friends at Trophy Smack. If you want to level up your fantasy league, just because we're in the season, it is not too late to do it. Go to trophysmack.com. We got links all over the site at truenorthffb.com as well. So make sure you go check it out, because with our promo code TNFF, you can get a free championship ring with the purchase of a trophy or a belt. So anybody who's watching on video, they can see just over my left shoulder is one of those beautiful championship belts that I won as part of the Kings Classic League. And let me tell you, like, they have some weight to them. You put it on your shoulder, you feel like a boss. You toss it around your waist and you just walk around the house just feeling like a king. And then when it comes draft season next year, I'm going to be rubbing that in all of my league mates' faces because it's just so beautiful. So go to Trophy Smack, buy like I said, a trophy or a belt, and use our promo code TNFF. You get a free championship ring. So it's a big fat blingy thing as well, and roll around in style with our friends at Trophy Smack. So big thanks to them and their support, and we're looking forward to flexing some hardware on our league mates at the end of this season, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to move into a high-powered offense, Ty, but it's a different high power than we expected coming into the season. So my truth bomb on this one is that Buffalo is more than just an elite quarterback and an elite wide receiver. Last year, it was mainly the Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen show. They went nuclear. We obviously had a little bit of Cole Beasley peppered in and a little bit of Gabe Davis peppered in, but for the most part, it was those two at the top of the docket for the Bills. But this year we've seen some pretty weird wide receiver production, Ty. We got Emmanuel Sanders as the wide receiver 20 and leading this wide receiver core. Stephon Diggs had a hot week in week 5 there, but he is the wide receiver 25 on the season at this point. And Cole Beasley's the wide receiver 50 right now. He's had some pretty highly targeted games as well, just low upside, obviously, because it's Cole Beasley. But yeah, I think like just my assessment here, Ty, as far as what's shaking out for these wide receivers, I think Diggs starting to heat up is going to be fine. Emmanuel Sanders, he has 4 touchdowns and he's looking like he's locked in as a playmaker for these guys. And then Cole Beasley has a 20% target share. So I think like those two, Sanders and Beasley, you're fine with those guys as kind of your wide receiver 3 flex plays. But I think the biggest thing that we've seen out of this team is in the running back and the tight end rooms. Your boy, Zach Moss, Ty, is quietly coming on. You mentioned him as far as your ranking tiers, and I think you probably had him around the back of your top 24 or so. And I think that is excellent just to see a Buffalo running back be there. I mean, Zach Moss has 74% of the snaps against the Chiefs this past week, which was a big, big game for real football. So they trusted him in that facet. Since week 2, we know he missed week 1. Zach Moss is the running back 15 since week 2. So, if you look at it even further, he's top 10 in the league in red zone carries, which is great. And most importantly, he leads his team in that category because Josh Allen has been that in the past. But yeah, Zach Moss, man, he has been fantastic. What do you think for the rest of the season? Do you think Singletary and Josh Allen are going to be a bit of a thorn in his side, or are the Buffalo Bills shifting in that run game to allow the running backs to do some of that work as well as Josh Allen?
Yeah, it's definitely like a nuanced conversation where do RB2s drop off? Where's that big cliff? You know what I mean? Because Zach Moss isn't on the good side of that. There's no doubt about it, because to answer your question, Devin Singletary, not worried about him. Josh Allen, yeah, he's going to cut into a lot of his work, almost all of his awesome high leverage work. And we've known that about the running back position, that the only hang up with Moss and Foos is the situation, because you kind of need Zach Moss to score, right? Because he is criminally underused in the passing game. And, they're serious competition, 4 targets in Buffalo as it is. So, and not unlike the touchdowns and the goal line work, like this is largely because of Josh Allen and the way he goes about business, right? And we accept the pass catching woes, but what we want to capture is just some of this high flying Bills offense. And, Zach Moss punching in touchdowns is what we want to see, because in the 12 games he hasn't scored during his young career, he averages barely 7 points per game in PPR. But this week in particular, it's a really nice matchup with the Titans on Monday as a 54-point total, and the Bills are like 5.5 to 6-point favorites, shop around. And James Robinson just hung up 150 yards rushing and a score against Titans last week. So I like Zach Moss. You can argue for him wherever you want in that tier rest of season, but he's definitely elevated himself as the season's gone on, going back to week 2 when we finally saw him after missing week 1. Dawson Knox, to touch on him, definitely the revelation at tight end this year, right? Like top 12 tight end in 4 or 5 weeks to equal his career total heading into this season for the 3rd-year breakout tight end. He is like just crushing it right now. I think he's 14th in tight end targets and 14th in expected fantasy points. But in this offense, he's 7th in air yards amongst tight ends, 6th in receiving yards, and leads all tight ends in touchdowns. Not to mention he's 1st in fantasy points scored over expectations. So there's no question that, you know, he is this year's breakout tight end for fantasy, even ahead of somebody like Dalton Schultz. And I think I want Dawson Knox in my lineup each and every week going forward, even ahead of guys like Noah Fant. And if I'm off to a bad start, like to give a hot take, I might even trade him straight up for George Kittle if I'm like off to a bad start, because sometimes you got to be bold out there.
Yeah, you got to be bad. You got to be bold. You got to be wiser, Ty. And I think that is a very bold one to do. But I think there is some merit to that because the points are coming for Dawson Knox. I'll admit he was a big miss for me coming into the season. I didn't think he was going to wrestle that work. I think obviously, like you touched on there, being outside of the top 10 in the volume categories, but being inside of the top 10 in the efficient categories has been obviously the culprit for him doing this, but it's good to see, right? Because it just adds another wrinkle to that Bills offense that we can kind of tie ourselves to. He's getting that red zone work too. He's got the most red zone touchdowns of any tight ends to add to the pile of feathers in his cap. So I think we just kind of have to reset our expectations for this offense. I don't think Stephon Diggs is going to be that top 3 option for us. He can do that week to week, but I don't think we're going to have to rely on that. We got to reset those expectations to top 12. But I think with that, we can reset some expectations for some top 24 running back production and some top 12, potentially top 5 tight end production. So while we're resetting expectations on a great offense, it's still a great offense and still one that we can reap the benefits of. We just reap it in different areas. So still attach yourself to that offense. And if you can get any of these guys, like Emmanuel Sanders, I would probably be looking for him. And then Zach Moss, even Devin Singletary, I think he's shown well for the volume that he's gotten so far this year. So good on the Bills for adapting and staying balling, I guess, let's say.
And just to touch on a question from the chat, Robbie Anderson, is he a drop? I think he is, especially if you can get somebody like a Tim Patrick, Kadarius Toney, Laviska Shenault might have got dropped, Jacoby Myers. These are the guys that I would drop Robbie Anderson for. So yeah, I do think he's a drop, even if that's bold, considering how much I liked Robbie Anderson in the offseason.
I don't think
speaking
I
of
would.
bold,
just real quick, I don't think I would.
Hold him?
No. Over the last 3 weeks, he's got 20 targets, so that's a little over 6 targets a game. Obviously, that's not huge, but I think in this offense with the profile of player that he is, I think better days could be ahead for Robbie Anderson because we're not seeing secondary production in the passing game from Terrace Marshall. We're not seeing a ton of secondary passing game production from the running back room. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey's coming back, but I think there is a lot of meat left on that bone, and I think Robbie Anderson get in there and just have some of it, you know.
Speaking of meat left on the bone, let's talk some Allen Robinson. Darnell Mooney is better than Allen Robinson. That's what I wrote down here in the truth section. That could be a bit hot, no doubt about it, and I'm not going to rank it as such yet, but I'm pretty close. Let's put it that way. Is Allen Robinson a wide receiver 3 even for you this week?
I think I probably let me have a peek skis here. I think he's probably kind of right on that fence like regardless. Bottom 10 matchup-ish. Yeah, exactly. So I think he's probably going to be right on the cusp, but that's just probably because he's Allen Robinson and because of, you know, the profile and that a couple of red zone targets can make a good week for Allen Robinson. So I'm not sure how I feel about the take on Darnell Mooney being better. I think for fantasy, I can see it right now, but I don't think it's going to be kind of have its lasting effects throughout the rest of the season. I think Allen Robinson is going to settle in a little bit, but man, he's not got the air yards. He's not got the volume. Darnell Mooney has more targets than he does. But I think better days should be ahead for A-Rob because he's just that type of alpha who's going to command some of those targets. And I think as Justin Fields settles in, if Justin Fields settles in, that's the biggest factor in all of this. But I think he will, and Allen Robinson's going to be fine because Justin Fields is a good quarterback and he can target that alpha down the field, and Allen Robinson can be that guy still. So I'm still on board with Allen Robinson over Darnell Mooney, but like you said, it's feeling like it's pretty close.
Do you know how many top 24 finishes A-Rob has through 5 games so far?
I'm going to go with a big Zilcher. Yeah.
Big Zilcher. And his total targets since week 2, he's seen 4, 6, 3, and 5 targets. Like, he's still seeing 25% of the team's targets, but the offense is really slowed down. They are just not clicking. The offensive, this coaching staff, we don't like, and the offensive line's just a mess. But Justin Fields has just not injected the deep passing element we hope for either. And, those targets aren't even really going to A-Rob this year. He's averaging like 8.2 air yards per target. And 2 years ago, that number was up almost 11 before dipping to 9.5 air yards per target last season. And we know he's not making like many defenders miss or anything. Like, he doesn't accumulate a lot of yards after the catch per reception. And now you add in like the very low touchdown upside, and Allen Robinson is just like almost impossible to even start in season long. And he's just not somebody I'm gravitating towards in DFS either. What about Mooney though? Do you think he's a wide receiver 4? Is he a wide receiver 3? Where does he slot him for you?
Yeah, I think he's in that 4 area. I think he's going to have volatility regardless of this target volume. I think he is going to have those up and down weeks, especially because of the Justin Fields factor. He's just not settled in yet. He's not ready to put this offense kind of not necessarily on his back even, but he's not even ready to like be a game manager plus just yet. He needs a little bit more time, but that's going to come from being in the fire, I think. I think what's going to happen for Darnell Mooney is just some volatility. He has, 7 targets, 8 targets, then a 4 spot, then 7, then 5. So it's just been a little bit up and down. I think what saves him is that on 5 targets, he can catch 2 of those for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I think, if you're chasing that, you are chasing something that is not going to be very reliable. So that's why I would probably put him in that, I'll put him in a flex. I've been starting him in Scott Fishbowl because it's been pretty nasty out there for that roster. Just because he gives you that upside, right? I think sometimes if you're in a bit of a dog shit situation with your team, you got to chase these kind of guys because they can give you those week winning weeks. And Darnell Mooney is definitely still that for me. So I'm not writing anybody. Well, I'm not writing either of these guys off. But I think I would probably rather go for Darnell Mooney for the next couple of weeks here. Oh man. It's hard out there for the Bears offense, though. We had high hopes for Justin Fields, and we just haven't necessarily seen it. So I'm going to move over to Jacksonville. Talking about Herb and the Jaguars. That place is an absolute mess. But one thing that is not a mess is James Robinson. And if I'm speaking the truth, Ty, James Robinson is a top 5 running back the rest of the way for me. And he is the only startable Jaguars player. We've seen erratic weeks from Marvin Jones. We've seen DJ Chark go down with an injury. Laviska Shenault had a massive week, and then the Jags just don't even use him in that capacity like they did, which was so successful, not only for Laviska, but for Trevor Lawrence in getting comfortable. Like, they need to help Trevor Lawrence out because they already have a not so good offensive line. So continuing to use James Robinson and insulating Trevor Lawrence with him is going to be their path because it's been a bumpy road for the young kid so far. So James Robinson, though, has been that locked in guy. He is number 4 in the league in rushing. He's getting a ton of red zone work. He's getting a little bit of pass catching sprinkled in. Carlos Hyde's not actually as much of a thorn in his side as I thought he would be. But what do you think about James RB1 son and what he's been doing coming back after that season last year? Wasn't like he was going to get the volume. Unfortunate injury to Travis Etienne, and James Robinson's just doing what James Robinson does.
No, I think he's a top 10 running back. I think that's safe. Top 5 might be a wee bold, but he is the running back 10 in PPR currently, I believe. So pretty impressive, especially considering James Robinson started pretty darn slow. Like James RB1 son, he finished outside top 24 in weeks 1 and 2, single-digit fantasy outings in PPR both weeks, but back-to-back top 12 finishes since all 20-plus point performances. So I think you can fire up James Robinson going forward pretty confidently as like a running back 1, yeah.
Yeah, it's looking good for him. And I think the reason I say top 5 is just because among some of those other options, like, okay, maybe top 5 is a little spicy now when I'm looking at the actual list, but I just think the volume is secure for him both in the rushing and in whatever receiving game is going to be given to the running backs in old Jayville over there.
Totally. Well, let's go to Beeville, Belichickville, in New England here, and talk some Jabroni Myers, because Jacoby, I wrote in the truth section, may never score a receiving touchdown in his career. Last year, nobody had 650 plus receiving yards without a receiving touchdown except Jacoby Myers. This year, nobody has 300 plus receiving yards without scoring a receiving touchdown except Jacoby Myers. And I'm pretty sure I even tweeted at StatHead, which is like the Pro Football Reference subscription one, and was like, hey, what is the most receiving yards by a player to start their career without scoring a receiving touchdown? And they were like, there is no way I can look that up on our site. They tweeted, that was their reply to me. In my mind, because they've never failed me. So
they have everything. Yeah.
I still recommend StatHead more than almost anything other than fantasypoints.com. 21 true or 10 all caps. But what I'm getting at is that, like Jacoby Myers, despite all that, is a wide receiver 3 in PPR right now, ahead of someone like Devonta Smith, Chase Claypool. So yeah, I really like Jacoby Myers, and I think the touchdowns are a coming. Do you think you would pay wide receiver 3 prices for somebody who might lack a bit of a ceiling?
Probably not. I don't know that the touchdowns are necessarily coming for him, Ty. I think the way this team is made up, it's going to be the run game is the number 1 option in the red zone. I think the tight ends are probably the number 2 and 3 option. So Jacoby is at best the 4th option in the red zone. He's not a yards after the catch guy whatsoever. And I think that's what kind of puts a cap on him, because as that slot guy who's soaking up all these targets, he's going to have to get some work done after the catch. And I don't think he even has a game over 30 yards after the catch, yet he has 2 double-digit target games with a 12 and a 14 spot. And he has a 9 target game as well. So I think he just needs to do a little bit more on his own in that role. Like, if you're going to be the short target guy and you're going to be productive for fantasy, you're going to have to score touchdowns and you're going to have to get it done after the catch. And he's not been doing any of those. So I think even like in this offense, I'm sticking with the running backs, but I might even think about going Kendrick Bourne as that guy who's just the upside play, because if I'm slotting Jacoby Myers in, he's in there as a flex. I hope I'm not relying on him as a wide receiver 2. And so depending on my situation, if I need a big week, it's not coming from Jacoby Myers. So I might risk that 0 spot from Kendrick Bourne for the opportunity that he might give me that 20 spot that I don't think I'm going to get from Jacoby Myers. So that's kind of where I'm sitting for these pass catchers there. But I'm kind of avoiding this passing game as a whole. Aside from like the Hunter Henry's been coming on a little bit and getting some decent red zone targets. So that's kind of where I might, too. Yeah, that's where I might attack. I think I have Hunter Henry as a top 10 tight end this week, actually. But
Hunter Henry only has 2 red zone. He has 2 red zone targets this year, according to PFF.
That's not bad.
That's kind of crazy. Jacoby Myers is like tied for the team lead with 5. So I think it's coming for Jacoby, but I also think it's definitely more of a, you're right, like it's more of a PPR option for Jacoby Myers, because the big plays are definitely something I could rail on with New England as well. They're the only team in the NFL without a 40-yard passing play this year, and nobody had fewer 40-yard passing plays than New England last year. So that continues to amaze me with Bill Belichick usually adapting so well, but
totally,
the explosive plays just haven't been there in New England.
For sure. And I think if you are going to get some of those, it's going to be like a Nelson Aguilar or a Kendrick Bourne that gives you them, or even maybe a Jonnu, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be Jacoby. So like you said, hopefully those red zone targets that he has been getting do kind of turn into some touchdowns, because I think then we'll start seeing some really nice upside with Jacoby as a strong wide receiver 3. Okay, let's go to the throne and talk about the king for a second, Ty. How about this truth bomb here? Derrick Henry is going to break the NFL record for most carries in a season this year. That's an interesting truth to kind of go in on, because that's a tough record to break. The record is held by Terrell Davis with 392 carries for the 98 Broncos. And the current pace for Derrick Henry with 17 games, I believe it's Terrell Davis with 392. I looked it up on StatHead.
No. There's a couple 400. There's a couple 400 carry guys.
Is
Larry
there?
Johnson. Larry Johnson, 2006. I think
maybe
had
I
like 415 or something.
Maybe I searched wrong. But anyway, Derrick Henry is, no, you're probably right. You have spent a lot more time in the vault of StatHead than I have, my friend. So I probably just searched the play index a little bit wrong. So that's totally my bad. But regardless, Derrick Henry is on pace for 482 carries, which would be absolutely insane. At this current moment, he has 142, and no other running back in the league even has 100. Look at how he's getting it done. 72% of his 640 yards have come after contact, and he's got the most explosive runs by any running back, with Nick Chubb being the only running back who's forced more missed tackles. So obviously I'm not telling you anything that you couldn't have assumed in the first place. Those are areas that Derrick Henry has crushed in the past and will continue to crush. But I just think we might be having like the outlier of all outlier seasons happening right now from King Derrick Henry. And with the Titans being mega injured at the wide receiver position, I think this could just continue. But with him being the running back 1 overall, Ty, he actually has 15 targets right now, and his career high is 31. So he's on pace to set career high marks in that category, which is pretty cool. But do you think this volume can continue without him breaking down and with him continuing to produce how he's doing?
That's a hard question. I definitely think he's going to break the record, to be honest. And I think what he's doing, we definitely have to stop, pause, and appreciate. He was the first running back last year to hit 375 carries I'm looking at since 2014. Coincidentally, that man, DeMarco Murray, later became Derrick Henry's teammate in Tennessee during his early years in the league. But yeah, 5 seasons in between each of the past examples of any running back hitting 375 carries. And Derrick Henry is slated to do it in back-to-back seasons now. And he's on pace to blow by the NFL record. It's kind of crazy, even in like a 16-game skew or whatever. And yeah, and I'm just looking in the chat here. So yeah, it was Larry Johnson. I was so close. I think I said Larry Johnson 415, but it's 416. Damn you, Craig.
Good looking out, coach.
So I think he does break some of these records. The question is, like you pose, how long can he keep this up? Will he hold up, right? And for dynasty owners, what kind of wear and tear does this season leave him with heading into 2022? And only one running back has more than 2 total seasons in their career with 375 carries, which Derrick Henry's going to do this year and make it 2 for him. And that's somewhat surprisingly Eric Dickerson, who you think it was maybe that would have been somebody else. But yeah, we all love Derrick Henry. What are you doing with Nate Brown in this offense, Trav?
Well, that was where I was going to take it next, because I like the kind of second piece of this truth is that the Titans will not have any wide receivers inside the top 15 this year. And that pains me to say, because we are big fans of AJB and how he gets down over in Tennessee. But I just think if you look at the volume for him, he's yet to have a double-digit target game, and he's not somebody who we expected to have 150 targets. He was never going to be that in this offense, but with Julio being out, with them so depleted as far as pass catching weapons, like Anthony Ferguson and Josh Reynolds, those guys are not striking fear in anybody. You know what I mean? So we thought this could be the year where AJ Brown gets into that 130, 140 target area, but so far it's not looking like he's tracking that way. I think the biggest things hampering him though, are that the touchdowns and the yards after the catch have gone way down. He has 1 touchdown so far this year. He had 11 last year, and I believe 9 as a rookie. And yeah, he's only got 1 so far this year. So that is a huge concern. And then the yards after the catch, he has been pretty much historic the last couple of seasons. Last year as a sophomore, he had over 6 yards after the catch per reception. As a rookie, he had just about 9 yards after the catch per reception. This year in 2021, 3.2 yards after the catch per reception. So it's just, he did a lot of his work on his own because he didn't get a lot of volume and wasn't in this crazy creative offense. And now that he's not doing the work on his own, the upside is majorly sapped, regardless of Julio's presence or not. I think it's extremely concerning. And then I think when Julio comes in, that muddies it up even further. But what do you think, Ty? Do you see a bounce back for AJB? Do you think Julio is a factor in that? What do you make of it all? Because he's a guy that we were drafting in the late 2nd round, AJ Brown. And then a lot of people were coming back with Julio in the 4th, 5th. So these are important decisions for people's rosters as to what we do with these guys.
Yeah, well, I don't think we can have it both. We can't have our cake and eat it too in this offense, not in Tennessee, not the way they've played this year early on. And if we want Derrick Henry breaking records, or if we expect that to happen, and I don't see why they don't continue to do what's worked so far, that definitely gives you pause for thought when it comes to these wide receivers. And AJ Brown is still expensive, and yeah, he's seeing over 20% of the targets still, and he's going to see a lot of the end zone targets. However, if he's not adding after the catch, if he's not super healthy, if he is battling, some health concerns, then that sucks. And he's sucked so far. He hasn't been a top 24 wide receiver this year yet. And last year, like that was 8 of 14 games last year, 6 of 16 games in his rookie season. So he's had a pretty consistent floor, maybe not so much in his rookie year, but last year he gave you the floor and gave you the ceiling with 6 of 14 games being a top 12 wide receiver. And so if you're losing the touchdowns, you're losing the yards after the catch, it's definitely gonna bug you. And I don't think Julio Jones is able to transcend the situation where he's probably still behind AJ Brown, and Derrick Henry is clearly the guy who is, the offense is running through.
Yeah, I think that's a really good assessment of this offense. It's not been great, and I think we've seen that bear out in Ryan Tannehill's performances as well. A lot of people had him as a top 12 quarterback, and it just has not been that way. So, yeah, tough break. But if they can get healthy, I think they can, have some decent weeks for us. But it's definitely not the same offense that we've seen the past couple of years with Arthur Smith at the helm. Ty, we're going to get into some dares, but one proposition that is not so daring is getting on Monkey Knife Fight and playing some of the best DFS player prop games in the biz. Our promo code TNFF at Monkey Knife Fight will get you an instant match on your first deposit of up to $50. Of course, we are in the thick of fantasy football season. One thing that we like to do is we like to throw down on the Thursday nighter. I'm going to tweet out a couple of our favorite picks just because we've got a bunch more to talk about as far as these dare options. So we're not going to do a segment of I Got 5 on it, but keep an eye on the Twitter account at TrueNorthFFB for us to get down and kind of lay some chips on the table with Monkey Knife Fight for the Thursday nighter. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we've got hockey season just started last night on Tuesday night, and we can throw down on there with Monkey Knife Fight. I like to watch the UFC events, and you can throw down on those. So Monkey Knife Fight really has everything, and I like how they're for any skill level. You don't have to do the research that we do as podcasters. You can go in there, you can see that they want this guy to throw for this much yardage, and you can decide if you think he's going to get more or less. You can go in, and there's games that are a little bit less heralded, like reception collection. So you take the morning slate of games, you pick the threshold of 21 receptions, and you pick 3 guys in that morning slate to hit 21 receptions. So a lot of fun can be had over there. You can get up to like 8-player combinations where you are picking more or less for 8 guys. And it's a lot of fun. You throw $5 down and you can turn that $5 into 200 if you hit all of them. So definitely anybody go out there, and I dare you to hop into some of those. And that program or that promo code, is TNFF at monkeyknifefight.com. Deposit 50, and with that promo code, they'll match it with another 50. So you got a cool hundy at Monkey Knife Fight. All right, Ty. I choose dare.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to do I dare you, and then I'm going to name a team, and it's going to be mostly backfield edition here.
Okay.
Kind of a way to sort through some of these running back by committee. So totally. I dare you to start a running back from the San Francisco 49ers, who were 15th in PPR scoring as a position after being 3rd last season. They're heading into this bye. They're heading into their bye this week. We don't know exactly who the quarterback's going to be coming out of the bye for the 49ers. So do you think Elijah Mitchell is like a bona fide running back too, after he played almost 70% of the snaps in week 5, returning from injury? Meanwhile, Trey Sermon played like 3% of the snaps.
Yeah.
And so what are you thinking about this backfield in San Francisco? I dare you.
Yeah, well, this is a rough one. I think they're kind of a microcosm of the fact that the running back landscape has been brutal this year. Obviously, we've had injuries on the player level, but some of these teams who we expected to be extremely beneficial for fantasy gamers as far as backfields have not shaken out. And I think San Francisco has been just that. Elijah Mitchell is the guy that I'm starting this week and for the foreseeable future. But what I'm not doing, Ty, and yes, Elijah Mitchell would be a strong running back to start for me, no problem. 70% of the snaps, you want that. Touchdown upside is there. Big play upside has been there for him. But what I'm not doing, Ty, is I'm not dropping Trey Sermon. I understand that he had that 3%, those 3% snaps this past week, but I'd be trying to get him as a throw-in on deals. If somebody drops him, you probably want to scoop him up. And another guy I'm picking up is Jeff Wilson. I am picking up Jeffy everywhere I absolutely can, because this is still a backfield that we're going to want. They've got an elite offensive line. They've got an elite scheme. They're going to run the ball. So don't it's fair to be panicking about Trey Sermon. It's fair to be worried about the rushing production that you've got out of this team. But I think better days are going to come for them because we've seen a little bit of turmoil at the quarterback position. We know the injury bug can strike at any time. And so while Trey Sermon hasn't looked necessarily that great, while we haven't gotten anything out of Jeff Wilson, there could come a time down the stretch where they put up big points for your team, potentially in league-winning fashion. So that's where I sit with these guys. That was kind of long-winded, Ty. Sorry about that, but I just want to stress that there's certain situations where you're not just dropping the guy and writing him off, because if Trey Sermon gets the starting job after Elijah Mitchell, who's already had a shoulder injury, which is notoriously not good for running backs, if he gets banged up 3 weeks down the road and you drop Trey Sermon, who's now got a lead back role for the San Francisco 49ers, you're going to be kicking yourself. So I'd be trying my damnedest to kind of keep that roster spot, even though it looks pretty ugly as far as his week-to-week production.
Yeah, and I think the one guy nobody's mentioning is Kyle Juszczyk, who's just playing a ton right now. He's playing high leverage snaps. He's basically operating as the pass catching back in San Francisco right now and fucking the whole program up, to be honest. So, I'm less worried about Jeffy Wilson fucking up the program. Like, Shanahan's been super defensive in the comments I've heard and the pressers I've heard over the last few weeks, where he's like, he'll be back in November. And it's like, okay, relax. Like, don't mind if we ask you leading up to November, then, since you said he'll be back in November this time. We're going to ask you late October now.
Sour Shanahan.
Yeah, he is so defensive. Like, we could all be dead by the time Jeff Wilson's back, that was his other one.
One thing for the juice, Kyle Juszczyk, is across the NFL, the leader in running back slot snaps, Kyle Juszczyk. So it's man, he is cool. I wouldn't be advocating to start him as a flex or anything. I think, like you said, he dicks up everybody else's operation. But you like to see just a reminder, though.
Yeah, and just a reminder, the reason we're really talking a lot of 49ers backfield constantly is just, that 49ers easy ass fantasy playoff strength of schedule. And this offense, I think, could still yield a league winning running back. And I really think Elijah Mitchell has the clear inside track at this stage of the game. I'd be buying on him because I think you can acquire Elijah Mitchell for a low end running back 2 price right now, which I think could be a steal come weeks 14, 15, 16, 17.
Totally. I was actually looking at Sharp today, Ty, and it looks like the way that, just with what we've seen from defenses this year, that schedule is not quite as good for the running backs, but it's still a pretty nice little shape up for the San Francisco. That's one thing that we like to use for strength of schedule is Sharp Football. So anybody who's checking it out, they got some really good metrics on there for running back pass catching efficiency and stuff like that. So it's fun to look at that stuff.
Trav, I dare you to start a Patriots running back right now.
See, I like this dare. I like this one because I'm very confident that it is Damien Harris. I get it. We know he's not getting the pass catching work. We know that. Brandon Bolden, didn't think I'd be saying that, but Brandon Bolden has that pass catching stuff on lock. He's got 10 targets over the past 2 weeks. But I think Brandon Bolden's pass catching work is going to end up being more volatile than Damian Harris's rushing work will be. So for me, it's still Damian Harris. He has 64% of the team's carries at this point, which is, for a New England running back, that's a pretty heavy workload. And I think he's going to start to take hold of the red zone work. We saw a couple of nice red zone carries this past week against Houston. He had a touchdown call back from a nice red zone carry where he bulldozed the pile into the end zone as well. So I think Damian Harris is the guy that you want, because while he's not going to get that pass catching work, he gives us what we know we're going to get. We know that we're going to get a steady carry share, and we know that he's probably got a decent chance in good matchups to punch in a touchdown. So Damian Harris for me, and I like that dare option for sure. Where are you sitting for those guys? Because it's a multitude of
no
players.
Idea, especially with Damian Harris. He's the guy I really don't know what to do with. I think I want Elijah Mitchell rest of the season over Damian Harris, to be honest. I don't think Damian Harris is the type of running back that you go out and target if you're off to a rough start or anything. If you lost Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'll rank Damian Harris as a running back 2 most weeks. I have him as such this week going against the Cowboys, but I think he's going to come with some down weeks. And the Patriots offense is no powerhouse. This offensive line is in flux, and the roles in this backfield are just so well defined. You know what I mean? Meaning he doesn't get used in the passing game. It's so frustrating. And it shows up do you know how many times Damian Harris has been a top 12 running back in his entire career? one time, Bob, one time, and zero
Totally.
times this season. So it's just been frustrating. He's finished as a top 24 running back just 2 of 5 games this year. And, he put up just under 14 PPR points in both matchups in weeks 1 and 2, but they were against 2 of the 3 worst defenses in terms of giving up fantasy points to the running back position this year in the Dolphins and the Jets, their division rivals. And last week, the game script just didn't go as planned for the Patriots, and Damien Harris failed to take advantage of what was supposed to be a great matchup going against the Texans in week 5. And because they were trailing in that game, which I think could be the case, against the Cowboys this week, again, another game with a total over 50, by the way, a rarity to say when the Patriots are in the matchup in recent years, to be honest. But what I was getting at is that the game will dictate how much Damien Harris just plays. Like, he played 33% of the snaps last week because of the game script, and he's only been out there on 44% of the offensive snaps for the Patriots right now. So yeah, he gets a lot of the rushing work, but I kind of want the receiving work for running backs in fantasy. And I guess that's the one bright light. Like, he had 30 receiving yards last week on just 2 catches against the Texans. I think he had 65 receiving yards in his career heading into that game. So that was kind of nice. So I guess that was long-winded. Like, I am reluctantly starting Damien Williams, Damien Harris, I mean, and knowing that I would have nobody to blame but myself. That is kind of the state of the running back position right now. But I also see an argument for trying to lean into variance. Like, I like to find spike week potential in my running back 2 slot or my flex spot. And Damien Harris just doesn't fit that bill for me.
See, I think he almost does. But anyway, carry on. Sorry. Yeah. No.
Well, I was going to say, who hasn't really fit that bill in the spiked weeks, and we've kind of chased it, but it hasn't been there, is the Baltimore Ravens backfield. So I dare you to start a Baltimore running back.
No. No, I think this is another team where we thought this was going to be a really fantasy viable backfield, but we haven't gotten nothing out of them. Obviously, the injury bug has hit pretty much everybody who's touched this backfield. But if I have to start one, it's going to be Latavius Murray. The last 3 weeks, he has 31 carries, where Tyson Williams only has 9. And I believe Tyson Williams was inactive in one of those games. And I think the reason for me that it is Latavius Murray, in these situations where it's kind of a committee, I am probably looking for a little bit of pass catching work. But I think just for this team, we know that the pass catching work is not going to be there. So give me the guy who has the more solid rushing volume. Kind of like a Damien Harris situation, but Latavius, I think, has no more than back end running back 3 upside. Whereas I think Damien Harris can give you some of that running back 2 upside so I think for Baltimore, it would be Latavius, but this is a situation where I'm trying to stay away as much as I can because there's so many guys. If you look at the last 3 weeks, Devonta Freeman leads the team with 4 targets, but the other guys behind him have 3 as well. So it's ugly. And when you're saying that Devonta Freeman leads the team in anything, that's not really a situation you want to target, which really sucks because I was definitely heavily in on this Baltimore backfield before the season started. And even on Latavius, I dabbled in a little bit of Lev Bell and a little bit of Devonta Freeman when they were signed, just for the fact that this offense is supposed to have built-in production, but it has not been that way, man.
Yeah, and I'll put it this way. It only has one way to go from here. I mean, they're 29th in PPR scoring as a position for running backs in Baltimore. So I think this could be the week for Latavius Murray. I have him ranked as a high-end RB3. I actually kind of like the matchup against the Chargers. They've given up the 19th most fantasy points, according to fantasypoints.com. So not a plus matchup on paper, which, this kind of is funny. It just says more about how valuable pass catching is in fantasy football for the running back position. So 19th in fantasy points allowed, but nobody's given up more rushing yards to running backs this season than the Chargers. And the Ravens running backs, they do their damage on the ground. Like you said, there's not a lot of pass catching for the running back position there. So this sets up really well for them, I think. And Latavius Murray should get the bulk of the early down work in a game that the Ravens are 3-point home favorites. And there's, a point total of over 50. I think it's 52 last time I looked. So a game I really want to target. Talking about a game I kind of want to target, your Eagles, Trav, play on Thursday Night Football. Kind of some whispers about Kenneth Gainwell possibly usurping Miles Sanders getting into midseason here. But Miles Sanders had a pretty strong performance last week. Myles Gaskin had a pretty strong performance against the very tough Eagles opponent in the Buccaneers this past week. So I dare you to start Miles Sanders. or Kenneth Gainwell?
Well, I don't want to start any of them. That is for damn sure. And I could see that happening with Gainwell overtaking Sanders, because if you watch that game, Miles Sanders could not stay in bounds to run out the clock for the life of them. I think on 2 or 3 plays at the end of the game, he has nice runs that you're going to milk the clock and be done with it, but he cannot stay in bounds to let the clock run. And so I'm sure the team was a little bit pissed off about that. Kenneth Gainwell comes in, proceeds to get a 10-yard run and stay in bounds for the clock to continue to run. So I think that's where that could come from. I think for me, like, if that's not the case and we see what we have seen so far, I think it's going to be Miles Sanders still for me. I was actually, like, initially when we were talking about the show, I was thinking, fuck, give me Kenneth Gainwell. He's getting the targets, blah, blah, blah. But if you look, Miles Sanders only has 2 fewer targets than does Kenneth Gainwell. He has more receiving yards on the season, and he has negative air yards to Kenneth Gainwell's positive air yards. So I think Miles Sanders is it's been clouded. Sorry, he doesn't have more yards. He has 11 fewer yards than does Kenneth Gainwell. But like I said, he's got a negative 2.7 air yards per target, where Kenneth Gainwell has 1.1. So Gainwell has had about 3 extra yards built into his targets versus Miles Sanders. And then we know Miles Sanders has been getting the bulk of the rushing work, and he's looked pretty decent. They just haven't necessarily run the ball enough for him to get a rhythm. So if I'm starting one, I'm still starting Miles Sanders, but I don't want to start any of these guys. I pulled Miles Sanders from my lineups last week. I pulled him for a Josh Jacobs, which felt really, really gross. But it, I would be, yeah, I know. That's why it felt super gross, because I was always team Sanders. But I'd throw him in a flex just because I see that big play upside. But man, it's really, really hard to start one of those Eagles running backs.
Well, what I noticed last week was Miles Sanders kind of not came alive, but I thought it was interesting you mentioned that he couldn't stay in bounds because they seem to like trust him more than any other game in that game. It was really interesting. Like, he played 75% of the snaps last week, and because it was a slow, gross game against Carolina, it doesn't really show. But his 5 targets, man, were 16%, 16% of the targets. So even though his 5 catches amounted to like 6 receiving yards, I think. That's a full PPR point more than his 45 yards rushing on 11 carries are worth, So if that's the type of usage that's going to persist into this game against Tampa Bay, who we just saw get lit up by Myles Gaskin last week, there's a lot of upside to capture, but we have to see the efficiency turn around, I think, a little bit. And speaking of efficiency, like, Myles he's been kind of like a punching bag over the last 16 months or so, I would say.
For sure.
So, and his catch rate was certainly called into question last year. So I think we should just give credit to Miles Sanders, who's caught 16 of 19 targets thrown his way in 2021. And I think the touchdowns are coming. Miles is one of just 2 running backs with over 300 yards from scrimmage right now who has yet to score a touchdown through 5 weeks. So I think he's an RB2 flex play. And, the Kenneth Gainwell is better than Miles Sanders, I think, is a bit premature. And as much as I like Gainwell, I've just been impressed. I've been impressed with what Gainwell's done. I wouldn't be surprised if Miles Sanders is the guy who's back in that solid RB2 conversation before long. And I think it'll come down to that pass catching.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think that Kenneth Gainwell over Miles Sanders is a little bit recency bias from the fact that people see that Kenneth Gainwell had that 8-target game a couple weeks back. And that just kind of jumps up of the dog shit running back production that the Eagles have had so far this year. That 8 targets is kind of that silver lining and inkling of hope. And so I see people kind of latching onto that. And I think that's partially why, but I'm in the same boat. I think Miles Sanders with the rushing on top of a pretty even split of pass catching work overall just kind of has that. And if they let him get some rhythm, he can hit his stride.
I just saw Laramie Tunsil out for about a month. I dare you to start a Houston Texans running back.
Man, that is a heinous dare. That's one of the dares that when like you're playing with your friends, you're like so embarrassed to have to do. But I think it's DJ. I think it's David Johnson, and it just feels so weird to say. Mark Ingram has been getting the carries for this offense, but I think on this team, the rushing work is not going to be very pretty. I think game script, offensive line, and overall talent in the backfield are working against this team having a productive rushing game. So I want in that situation the guy who's going to get some of the targets, and that is David Johnson. Over the past 2 weeks, he has 27% of the team's targets with 10. And so, I will take David Johnson as the guy that I would start, but this is another situation where I'm standing out in the street banging pots and pans if he gives me even double-digit PPR points. So definitely an avoid for me if at all possible, but the running back landscape is freaking dire. So if you're going to start a Houston Texans player, it's going to be David Johnson, I think. Where are you sitting, buddy?
No, I'm not starting any of them. That's for sure. I mean, they're 30th in PPR scoring as a position, and we're seeing the Patriot way kind of unfold in that, running back by committee philosophy that's going on with defined roles there. Even 4 deep, and now you lose your one decent offensive lineman, your one good offensive lineman, and could be curtains for that run game. I think at least that's already, it might have already been. The curtains might have already been drawn on that one. But speaking of which, the Jets haven't. They've been even worse. They're 31st in PPR scoring as a position. Actually, I think they're dead last because I was looking on FF today, and I think they're not scoring Cordell Patterson as a running back in that one because they have the Falcons as the lowest scoring running back unit. Anyways, long story short, the Jets are the worst. They're and they're actually allowing the most points to the running back position too. Talk about landing on the worst end of both spectrums. Pretty crazy. So I dare you to start any running back from this Jets backfield.
Yeah, and like I'm only giving you names here because you're daring me, Ty. If I was if I was able to, I would say none, but I'm the one who's being dared to do things here, not you. So that's completely fair. So since you dared me, and I am not going to shy away, it's going to be Michael Carter. Just because like none of these guys offer you really much upside as well. You mentioned it with the offense. That alone is not offering you upside. I think the players don't offer you a ton either, but of the bunch, it's going to be Michael Carter. He's slowly been climbing up this depth chart. His snaps have increased the past 3 weeks. He actually leads the team in snaps over that 3-week span. He's got a couple rushing tutters in there as well. So I think like, of those 3 guys, Tevin Coleman, Ty Johnson, and Michael Carter is the best bet to break off a couple of big plays. And that's pretty much all you can hope for out of this backfield is that he pops one off and gives you that kind of spike production from week to week. So it's going to be Michael Carter for me. But again, if I could, I wouldn't.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm not really looking to start any Jets running back. I kind of think it's a Ty Johnson, Michael Carter debate, and Michael Carter is definitely starting to run away with that job. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, Ty, I think we can call her on that one. We're at about $1.15 here. We were going to dive into the Panthers pass catchers as well, but I think we covered that with Coach Craig in the comments asking us about Robbie A being a drop. So look at you, Coach. Like, you know our show so well that you can tell what we're going to talk about in the future, man. So yeah, shout out to you, Coach, and everybody in the comments. We love all you guys coming in there and chopping it up. Anybody who is listening after the fact, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the little bell to get those noties, and leave a comment and a little like on the videos because we love seeing that and love interacting with the people who like our work. Again, that website is truenorthffb.com. The socials, Twitter and Instagram are at truenorthffb. True North Fantasy Football on Facebook. And then thank you so much to our friends over at the Fantasy Points Media Group. Just can't thank them enough. Check out all of the shows in the media group. They can be found on Twitter at FantasyPTS Live, putting out great stuff. They've got a Friday recap every single Friday showing all the shows from the week that was from the Fantasy Points Media Group. So big shout out and love to them and the True North team for all the work that they're doing. Ty, you got any parting shots for the people, my brother?
All good. Make sure you tune in to Sons of DFS tomorrow night. Thanks to everyone in the comments. My facial hair is actually fake. Didn't want to join the beard committee. It's fake. Glues it on. I glues it on.
It's drawn on. Yeah. It's a little mascara draw on, which you did an impeccable job of, I might add, Ty. So with that, just thanks again, everybody. We will be back next week. Hope everybody has a great week 6. And until then, peace.